Kinsey's critics believe his involvement with Green was morally indefensible, especially because the paedophile was probably still sexually abusing children.
The only justification for defending Kinsey was that all this happened before. If Green was sexually abusing children to 1954, Kinsey's last book came out in 1953. That certainly would mean that all of that violence and all of that abuse was going on throughout the entire time Kinsey was collecting these data. Wouldn't it?
Green was not the only paedophile providing information to Kinsey.
We got them in prisons, a lot of them, because we had the prison records of these people. So we'd say, give us a list of everybody in San Quentin who's sent up on pedophilia charge, and we'd go after them. So we got a lot that way. Then there was also a pedophile organization in this country. They cooperated with us, and some of them who were not, of course, not incarcerated, they came and gave us information.
Not all of the paedophile information arriving at the Kinsey Institute in Indiana came from within America.
There was a man in Germany who was a pedophile, and he wrote Kinsey. And he was interested in information about pedophilia, and he offered his own case history. Of course, Kinsey couldn't go to Germany to get it, but he wrote him questions in a letter, and they carried on quite a correspondence. And we were learning some interesting things about pedophilia in Germany, you might say.
The pedophile was Dr. Fritz von Baljusek, a former senior Nazi Party official. Before the war, he had been a stormtrooper. During the war, he had commanded a ghetto in an occupied Polish town. During all this time, and in the years that followed, he sexually abused hundreds of pre-adolescent girls and boys. He recorded the details in pseudo-scientific diaries in which he claimed to have masturbated and penetrated the children to assist their sexual development. At Kinsey's request, von Baljusek sent his diaries to Indiana. But then one of his victims was murdered.
So the police were looking for pedophiles, and they ran across him and decided he was probably the murderer. And so as they went through his possessions, they found in his correspondence with Kinsey. So they said, aha, Kinsey must know all about this man. We've got to have Kinsey's testimony and whatever records this man sent to Kinsey. So they got Interpol, International Police on the thing. And they even involved the FBI and some other things. And they put an enormous amount of pressure on Kinsey to reveal this guy's, this stuff he sent. And he was also keeping a sexual diary, and they wanted his diary badly. And so Kinsey said, absolutely not. This is completely confidential, and you're not going to get it. We'll destroy it before we let you have it.
Von Baljusek was never charged with murder, but he pleaded guilty to sexually abusing more than 30 children. At his trial, the judge criticized Kinsey for failing to report such an active pedophile to the police. It is a criticism the Kinsey Institute rejects.
I think people have got to ask themselves the question, do they believe that research into sexuality should be done or should not be done? Particularly research into sexuality which might be, in some sense, illegal.
But if the cost potentially is more children at risk of abuse, can that cost be justified?
Consider the cost of remaining in ignorance. Unless we know about these behaviours, we'll be in a much worse position than if we have more information about them. That was Kinsey's view.
John Bancroft is adamant that Kinsey never did more than accept reports from paedophiles on their sexual activity.
Kinsey didn't ask anybody to carry out any particular form of sexual behaviour. He simply asked them to let him know of their experiences that they'd had.
But at von Baljusek's trial, an exchange between the judge and the paedophile seemed to suggest otherwise. The judge said,
I had the impression that you got to the children in order to impress Kinsey and to deliver him material.
And von Balyasek replied,
Kinsey himself asked me for that.
If the judge's impression was correct, and if von Balyasek was telling the truth, it would be evidence of Kinsey's involvement in ongoing child sexual abuse.
It tells me that von Balyasek, who was not a sex researcher, got his directions as to how to do the, quote, scientific part of the research from Dr. Kinsey, that he was directed.
Over the years, people have used their contacts with Kinsey in a variety of ways, and it's not surprising that if someone's being charged with an offence, if they can bring Kinsey's name in, they will do, in the hope that it might mitigate their case. But Kinsey was not responsible for what that man was doing, nor did he encourage it.
The key to resolving Kinsey's involvement with child sexual abuse is in von Balyasek's diaries, but the Kinsey Institute refuses to release them. However, for more than 15 years, Kinsey appealed to people of all sexual orientations to send him information. In at least some of these appeals, he seemed prepared to give instructions on how to record their sexual activity.
Persons who have kept calendars or who are willing to begin keeping day-by-day calendars showing the source and frequency of their sexual outlet are urged to write to us for instructions.
So many people responded that the Kinsey Institute has never been able to catalogue their material, and today has no idea who sent in which diaries. But the Institute says it has long been expecting to hear from someone claiming to be a victim of Kinsey's paedophile correspondence. Esther White is the first person publicly to make this claim. Esther's family had a long-standing connection with Kinsey. Her grandfather attended Indiana University with him. But Esther came from an incestuous family. She claims she was abused first by her grandfather and later by her father.
The abuse started with my father, I think, as a very young child, probably about age 7. My father started a loving, concerned, petting kind of an affection. And when the opportunity came along, he took the opportunity to turn that from affection into what he called affection and love, into a sexual relationship, intercourse, oral copulation, ugly things that I don't like to talk about.
Based on what her father told her, Esther believes he was one of the pedophiles who provided information to Kinsey.
My father actually did mail in some questionnaires, I believe, to the Kinsey Institute about the sexual abuse that he was doing on me. At the very peak of when all the abuse was going on, there was a paper in a brown envelope, and it was kind of halfway out of the envelope. It was a summer afternoon, and I don't know why I remember there was a warm breeze blowing through the bedroom window. The envelope had blown a little bit, and I went to put it back on the dresser, and I saw that there were questions there. And it was a whole series of questions with little boxes in front of them. And I read one of the sentences, and I didn't know one of the words. And so I asked my father, what is O-R-G-A-Z? Oh, he says, that's orgasm. And he continued to explain to me what an orgasm was. And then I realized why he was looking at his watch. Because he was telling me to let him know when I felt an orgasm. And when he saw that I had seen this paper, he immediately said he had a deadline to meet and he had to send it away. So he put it in this envelope.
I know nothing about this woman or her father or grandfather. I have no idea whether there's any basis of fact in what she's saying at all.
Would it be possible for the Institute to examine its files and determine whether her father did send information to Kinsey?
At this point, I can't say. We have a huge amount of information that people have sent to the Institute about their sexual experiences. Somewhere amongst that, there may be something relevant to this woman. But that material is uncatalogued, unordered, and I really have no idea how difficult it will be to check that out.
Can you understand, though, why she would feel disturbed by the knowledge that that material may be residing here in the Institute?
If the description is accurate, then I can see she could have some concern, yes. But she can also rest assured that the material will be treated with great confidentiality. And we will never reveal the identity of anybody involved to anyone else.
But from what her father said about Kinsey, Esther fears the details of her abuse may have been used in his second book, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female. In a section dealing with sex between adults and children, Kinsey claimed to have evidence that children can enjoy abuse.
The adult contacts are a source of pleasure to some children, and sometimes may arouse the child erotically and bring it to orgasm. It is difficult to understand why a child, except for its cultural conditioning, should be disturbed at having its genitalia touched.
But for Esther, some memories are so painful they stand out even 50 years later.
My school was going to have a little operetta. When I got on stage, I was so scared because I knew what was going to happen on the way home. My father put me in the back seat and, of course, continued to sexually abuse me. But I looked out the back window and there was a gorgeous, beautiful moon and stars. And it's very difficult to say it. I'm sorry. It was a very painful memory to remember. But I was crying so hard that the tears were running into my eye, out of my eyes and down into my ears. And I was crying and my sinuses were so filled up I couldn't breathe. And my ears were filling up with water. And I just had a fear, I'm going to die.
Surely the way to get information on children's sexuality is not by asking men who have a vested interest in saying children are sexual and they enjoy being sexual.
Nobody has said that the best way of getting information about childhood sexuality is by talking to paedophiles. Kinsey didn't say that. He simply reported some information of that kind because he thought it was worthy of consideration.
Based on Kinsey's writings, he approved fully and wholly of adult-child sexual interactions, what he called play or interactions. Not only that, he recommended that adults could effectively aid